LinkedIn, X, Facebook, Twitch. I almost said Twitter. Finally getting that right. This just want to do a quick update. My name is Frank Lavinia. You can catch me at the following URLs. I just want to do a quick update. It's been a very chaotic time of year because of some family things going on out of state. Nothing like catastrophic. Well, it depends how you define catastrophic. But everyone who lives here is fine and safe, happy, and healthy. We had a bit of a quick another run in with COVID, but fortunately, it was kind of a dud. But I just wanted to say thank you for your patience in terms of the streams kind of dipping off. Usually the holidays is already a slow time, but I like to keep the streaming momentum because, um, some of us are driving a lot, visit family and things like that. But if you caught that intro, I actually just cooked that up tonight. Um, with some new music that I actually made thanks to the power of AI. So that soundtrack that you heard was actually AI generated, and it was fun to create that. If you've been following my LinkedIn of late, you'll see that I've been doing some more experiments with different language models. Um, um, and creating some using AI to generate content, up to including Bailey. Bailey is our artificially intelligent personality who is a kind of a third host on Data Driven. Oh, that was the wrong one. And yeah, so that's kind of what's going on. Busy planning 2024, kind of some stuff. I have my 10x planner right here, um, courtesy of Grant Cardone. And yes, those are Mr. Meeseeks. Um, say what again, Jerry? I managed to pick up some really good um, Rick and Morty stickers a few years ago, and I actually found a stash of them because a lot of stuff is still lost in the move. Actually, where do I have my Mac? I got a cool sticker on the Mac, but the Mac is upstairs. But the cool thing is, I have some Red Hat stickers. There we go. There's a there's a Red Hat sticker. This is actually from my last Red Hat event I spoke at, which was the Red Hat Commons down in this, so Command Line Heroes. My son wanted this for his laptop. Managed to get the older son a laptop for his for Christmas. But yeah, so this could be the last live stream for the year, and I figured let's make it festive. I still got the dirty desk. Clearly, I didn't spend a lot of time cleaning up the office. um, but a lot of good things are in the pipeline. Andy and I are talking about the next season of Data Driven. We have a couple of shows that are in the pipe. There's actually two that we recorded over the last week and a half, and those are going to come out. We also have a couple left in the longer backlog, so those are going to come out. So Data Driven will be resuming in 2024, as will Impact Quantum. Because as I'm going through and kind of catching up on my reading and things like that, there's been a lot of innovation in the quantum space. I mean, a ridiculous amount of innovation. So I definitely want to dive back into that. And I do my New Year's resolution right here, you heard it first, is to solve our calendaring issue. You've heard me bang on quite a bit about how horrible bookings is. Horrible is a strong word. It works well enough. And I also have a bunch of integration with some powerful app flows so I can kind of sync my calendars because I got a lot going on. As you can see in the background, my dog is bouncing around. That is actually the dingo. That's the dog. That's the source for the name of the Dingo Project, which is how I produce a lot of blog posts. Speaking of which, I did mention this on a previous stream. I am going to start winding down the ridiculous amounts of posts on franksworld.com. You kind of already saw it. Last month was 229. This month has been closer to 120. I'm going to keep it to the low 100s or possibly in the double digits, just because it's going to give me time to work on some other things that I have been cooking on and sitting on because I think we're at an inflection point for artificial intelligence. We're at an inflection point for society in general for a lot of reasons, right? And there's clearly some geopolitical things going on. But if you look at how AI is evolving and how AI is impacting our lives from the mundane to the profound, the mundane, people using chat gpt to cheat in their homework, which I suppose isn't really mundane if you're a teacher. But if you look at kind of what's happening in um, military tech, right, in terms of the amount of AI that is going to be part of what warfare looks like in the future, right? This is not trivial. This is serious stuff, and it's my belief that open source AI is best for humanity. Now, why do I say that, right? You're probably thinking, Frank, you just showed off a Red Hat sticker a minute ago. You work for Red Hat. Obviously, you're a big fan of open source. And that's true. But I would also add that I wasn't always a big fan of open source. During the Bomber era, I cut my teeth on the Microsoft technology stack. And it was really over time I realized that closed source is really not bad per se, but it was really the Silverlight experience that really kind of woke me up to that. Was the idea that Silverlight was killed, whether or not it was a good idea or not, that's not the point. But Silverlight was killed very much behind closed doors. And so you had an entire ecosystem more or less collapse in very short order. Like very short order. I like to say that within months, Silverlight developers were from being rock stars to rocks in the gutter looking up at stars. And as someone who was a practitioner of that and active member of that community, I didn't feel like our voices were heard. I didn't feel like anyone listened to us. Well, they listened, but they didn't act on it, right? We had no say in that. And if you look at kind of shortly thereafter, a few years later, you saw Node.js had this whole battle fought out when the community actually was listened to. And that for me was an aha moment. Like, maybe this open source thing has legs. Or not so much legs, but decisions are made not in a vacuum, not behind closed doors. Now, I'm not naive, right? I'm sure there's a lot of things that we don't know that happen in open source projects, but it's a lot harder to pull that off. It's the same thing here with AI. When you look at AI, here I'm going to run my. Can I run my? There we go. I'm going to put on my little holographic projector. But if you, oh, that's distracting. Can I get the Santa one? All right, I was going to shut that off. Squirrel. But when something is open source, there is a base level of transparency. It may not be fully transparent, let's be real, but it's at least translucent, right? You can kind of figure out what's going on. You can literally look at the code behind it. Now, that's something that I think people can get on board with, right? You see this, and it was really Red Hat. They kind of pioneered this business model, but I think it's really Databricks that took this to the next level when the people who created Spark kind of built the company called Databricks, and it's worked out pretty well for them. But you're seeing a lot of this innovation happen in open source because multiple people can kind of work on a project together and theoretically anyway, work as a community to solve problems. Now, what's interesting, and I bring up the Node.js thing, even though that's kind of an old story, right? It was like from 2014, 2015. There were people in the Node.js community who weren't happy with some of the decisions that were being made, the pace, the stability of the thing. So they basically forked it. And I think the project was called IO.js. And it was basically a one-to-one fork, starting at first. And they said, you know what? We're going to do it our way, right? And if you don't like it, If you want to use that version, you can use that version. If you want to use IOJS, you can use that. Now, there are risks to that, right? It's not all kittens, rainbows, and unicorns. Um, but the risks of that are obviously, and this is kind of the FOMO that was spread out during the bomber era about open source was, this could splinter into 1,000 pieces, and that happens, right? That does happen. That is a risk. However, um, when cooler heads prevail, as they did in the Node.js case, um, it works out well for everybody. Works out well for the community, the foundation behind it. There's a lot to be said for that type of approach, right? Because you could always walk away from the table, right? That is an option. It's kind of, well, I don't want to say nuclear option because read the news today, but it is definitely an option, right? But it's that option that makes the key players on the field more likely to listen. So when Silverlight was killed, no one in the community had a say. In fact, I have a big issue, not so much that it was killed, but how it was done, how it was messaged, aka not messaged. It was kind of hinted at, you know, um, that sort of thing kind of soured me on that experience, soured me on proprietary technology. And the subsequent kind of experience with Windows Phone, Windows Metro apps, or whatever they call them now, still kind of leaves a taste in my mouth in that way. To the point where when I got into AI after the collapse of Windows Phone, what really appealed to me was the nature of data science and AI, is that, and machine learning, right? Is that it's mathematically based. And because it's mathematically based, you are largely going to get the same answer, regardless of what data center you're running in, right? Whether that data center is owned by Jeff Bezos, whether that data center is owned by Microsoft, whether it is owned by Google, doesn't matter. Whether it's your own data center. Now, obviously, if you're old enough to remember the Pentium 5 fiasco, yeah, I suppose in that case, maybe it's not so clear cut. For those that are wondering what the heck I'm talking about, when Pentium 5 came out, there was some issues with their floating point math algorithm that was in the chip that made it so certain operations would not always yield the same result or even an accurate result. That being the exception that proves the rule, math is generally platform agnostic. Math is universal. And what I appealed to me after the collapse of, the kind of the triple threat, right? The collapse of Silverlight, then the collapse of Windows Phone, then the collapse of Windows 8 Metro apps, right? That really appealed to me, this open source nature of, or mathematically based, right? Then I kind of walk backwards into open source because most of the tech stack in AI is largely open source. There are exceptions, but those are exceptions that kind of prove the rule, right? in the sense, right? So while there are proprietary solutions, most of these rest on top of open source technologies. And I think that's important going forward because we are building out algorithms that are going to influence decisions that are made from the mundane to the spectacular to the horrifying. And I think that I don't even want to say as a community, as a species, as a society, I think that's in our best interest to have this kind of discussions open sourced, right? Or have these types of things open sourced. Now, I say this not because I work at a company that has championed open source for many, many years, long before it was cool, but I say this as a human being who is concerned about some of the decisions that are being made about AI, right? And it could be as mundane as, what ads are being shown, right? Or what posts are being shown or not being shown, right? That is increasingly becoming an influential factor in mass public opinion. That in and of itself may not be dangerous, but that can easily be hijacked and weaponized. And you see unintended consequences of that all the time. Even if it's not malicious, you do see unintended consequences. How often do you scroll through your YouTube feed and the thumbnails, they'll show people making ridiculous facial expressions, right? Why do they do that? And why is that? Well, it turns out that the more appealing the thumbnail or the more curiosity that thumbnail brings about, you're more likely to click on it. What does that drive? That drives behavior. That incentive drives a behavior to create more and more ridiculous thumbnails that are out there, right? And some channels are more adept at this than others. But you'll see like where they'll a celebrity gets bad news or whatever. It's not even really bad news, but something didn't go their way, right? They'll actually like morph their face with some kind of presumably Photoshop, and like make it look like they're shocked and their mouth is open, and they even Photoshop tears, like something actually horrible happened to them. And it turns out it was something pretty minor, right? But it got you to click. And that's really kind of the thing. So, from the macro level to the micro level, there are going to be other things that are going to be made. And I think that those types of decisions, that type of data, even if the data is not sourced, even if not open source, because I don't think that's feasible, even legal, in a lot of privacy sovereignty concerns, but the methodology needs to be done in a more open way, right? And I think a lot of this, for a lot of businesses, are basing their business model on top of OpenAI, which is just one institution, one organization, right? If you put all your eggs in that one institution, a simple power struggle between the CEO and the board can suddenly become a big problem for you. And I think that 2023 has shown, 2022, I think, kind of opened our eyes to what's possible with AI. And 2023 has shown us kind of continued to show what's possible with AI, but also shown that the risks are very real. And the risks are not just in the technology, right? It's the people, it's the process, as well as the technology. And I think that's the lesson that we should take away from 2023, and why I'm a proponent of making this as open source as reasonably possible. If you look at the marching orders for OpenAI, it's not, how open are they, right? There's still a lot of research that they've not made public. Why is that? I mean, I guess it's a very competitive field, but keeping it quiet, keeping it under wraps hasn't really deterred competitors either, right? You'll see Google has gotten way better. Llama, Mixtral, I think I'm pronouncing that right. All of these models are coming out that are on par, right? Even if they're not as good as, but they are at least in the same league, so to speak, as ChatGPT. So you're going to see a little project I'm working on. Hopefully I'll have something to say soon, because of said family events. This has not been a tranquil kind of meditative reading week that I had hoped for. I was, however, able to hang out with the boys, the kids, and play with their MetaQuests. I got one of them a MetaQuest. I got a new MetaQuest 3, and I gave the old one to another kid. So we now kind of have 3 of those. And I have to say, I am impressed with the MetaQuest 3. If for nothing else, is I think that the real value of this technology, right? Virtual reality, is mixed reality or augmented reality, right? The ability to, we set it up in the big room right by the Christmas tree, right? And it maps out the room. It does a LiDAR sweep of the room, so it kind of knows the shape of the room. Yes, there are privacy concerns there too. But what was really cool was you were able to, fight aliens inside the room. Like they would show, like the spaceship would land, and it literally landed on the coffee table. 2 legs were on the coffee table, 1 leg was on the couch. The dogs actually were just laying on either side, blissfully unaware what was going on. And it was just fun. It was just fun in a way I can't explain. And there was another game experience. That first one I think was called First Steps, and then there was another one that like this hospital-looking device, which sadly I have some experience looking at. Kind of shows up, and you plug it in. You get to grab the things you plug it in, and then you kind of I don't know how to describe it, but like like this little portal kind of opens up in the floor, and like these things fly out and they start talking to you. It was very cool. It was very cool. And I think that while fully immersive virtual reality has its place, I think it's really struggled. Right. And I say this as someone who's worked on some VR in any flavor, going back to the VRML, um, playing around with that. It just, something's missing. And I think that missing environment is the augmented reality. So hopefully I'll be able to do some streams where I can kind of show the thing, and you know, I'll get the Oculus hooked up and I can stream the contents from that. But I think that's really going to be the key differentiator. And in early next year, Apple is releasing their headset, which, as I understand, is going to have some pretty heavy augmented reality features too. So I think we're on the cusp of, while there is a lot of bad news in the world, um, we're on the cusp of some new innovations that I think are going to be, are not going to change everything. Everything's not going to be kittens and rainbows and unicorns, but I think it's optimism. So I am cautiously optimistic about 2024 and what it'll bring. So just in case this is my final live stream, because there's, like I said, a lot going on at Chateau Lavinia. Yeah, I figured I would just do a quick live stream and kind of update folks and share my enthusiasm for open source AI and the importance of the transparency that you kind of just get built in with open source. And even if it's not transparent, it is translucent, which is something you are, it's a certain baseline of transparency you get with open source that you do not get with proprietary technology. With proprietary technology, you're at the whim of whoever's building it to provide that insight into what's going on behind the scenes. So with that, I'm going to end the stream. And I want to thank you for watching this. If you're watching this live, put in the comments down below. If you're watching this live, say hashtag live or hashtag replay if you're watching this on the replay. And with that, I will wish you a good night. And just in case I don't stream again, for all the aforementioned reasons, Happy New Year. Stay safe out there.